A sci-fi series starring Mr. Simmons is here. This is another suspenseful sci-fi show by him besides the Relative Universe. Let's dive right in. Frank and Irene are a loving couple, but they rarely leave their home. Every night, Frank pushes his wife to a warehouse basement with a mysterious cave. Above it hangs a sign leading to a stargate. They enter the secret room with snacks, and a blinding flash later, the warehouse turns into a luxurious viewing room. This is their long-guarded secret. The cave acts like a wormhole, transporting them to another planet. Although there's a hatch leading outside, they stay inside because Frank once released a mouse that didn't last a minute. Due to their age, Frank decides to share the secret with you, but Irene strongly opposes, wanting to solve the cave's mystery first. Their nightly trips to the warehouse are noticed by their neighbor, Big Fat. The next morning, as Frank prepares to take his wife for a checkup, they find Big Fat fixing their lawn and pretending to borrow tools to access the warehouse. Frank refuses, raising Big Fat's suspicions. He tells his wife there's a secret in the warehouse. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Irene's results shock the doctor. Despite being 73, she suddenly has multiple illnesses. The doctor asks if she's been exposed to toxins, and Irene recalls the secret room. Could frequent travel be causing her illness? To keep the secret, Irene doesn't tell the doctor about the warehouse. At dawn, she writes a will, determined to solve the mystery with her last breath. She wants to open the hatch and see the room's entirety. Suddenly, a stranger discovers the secret. Irene asks who he is, and his name shocks her. What's going on? Terrified, she escapes and tells Frank. When Frank enters the basement, the man is already injured. Frank lowers his hammer, but he doesn't believe Irene, thinking the man is a fugitive. He insists on calling the police. When the police arrive, Irene tells them nothing happened, blaming her husband's dementia. The mysterious man stays temporarily. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman in Mexico enters the same cave. Unlike Frank and Irene, she seems familiar with its structure. The first episode ends here with many clues and a red herring. Who is the man from the secret room? Could he be the neighbor, Little Fat? Mr. Simmons' sci-fi work is full of suspense, leaving us guessing the ending. This is definitely the last American drama I'll review. I watched it like a fool all night. Although it claims to be a suspense sci-fi, I call it the king of suspense. I smoked a whole pack and still couldn't figure it out. What could be explained in 2 episodes took 400 minutes and still made no sense. Don't waste time on the original. The protagonist, Frank, has a mysterious cave at home that can transport him and his wife to another planet. Currently, it's only good for stargazing. Until one night, Irene discovers a mysterious man named Ed who escaped from a cult using the cave. The cult members find Ed, and anyone who betrays the doctrine is killed. Surprisingly, the leader only gives Ed's rough coordinates. Later, I realized it was to drive the plot. Turns out Frank's isn't the only house with such a cave. According to Ed, the caves have been around for 300 years, each with a guardian. By entering coordinates, you can be sent to another cave. Ed takes his daughter on a journey of assassination. Meanwhile, Frank and his wife are clueless. Ed doesn't reveal the cave's secret and pretends to have amnesia, freeloading at Frank's. The neighbor Fatty is anxious and decides to push the plot. He gets Frank drunk, who spills the secret. Frank plans to show Fatty the transport, but the machine doesn't work. Unwilling to give up, Fatty researches online and finds the caves first appeared in Argentina, as described in sci-fi novels. Sure enough, Frank discovers the energy drive, but the energy orb inside is missing. No problem. Fatty is determined to push the plot. He recalls Ed's sneaky behavior in the backyard and suspects he hid the orb. Fatty and his dog search the yard and find floating leaves, indicating recent digging. Fatty finds the hidden orb. To power the cave, he even brings a generator. Adding high voltage, it's bound to explode. Next, the miracle happens. The energy is detected by Ed's daughter, indicating Ed's escape cave is nearby. Fatty and Frank are unaware of the danger. The energy from the transport device attracts deadly fire. Seeing the shocking scene, Fatty asks Frank why he doesn't explore outside. Frank is curious about the world beyond the planet. However, Frank once experimented with his wife, and the mouse they released didn't last a minute, indicating the air outside is unbreathable. Fatty suggests wearing a spacesuit to explore. Frank brings out a 10-year-old suit, but it can't solve the oxygen issue. Fatty is dumbfounded. After discovering the cave's secret for 20 years, they still haven't solved the oxygen problem. Fatty, determined to help the useless protagonist, takes Frank to buy oxygen tanks. After solving the oxygen issue, Fatty bids farewell to his wife, ready to explore the universe despite the risks. Fatty's small step is a giant leap for mankind. He enjoys the moment of landing on the planet. Frank inside is worried about safety and warns Fatty not to go too far. But Fatty doesn't listen. Suddenly he sees something and tells Frank via walkie-talkie that there's furniture behind a rock. Frank fears it's an oxygen-deprived hallucination and urges Fatty to return. But Fatty, driven mad, goes further until the signal is lost. No matter how Frank calls, there's no response. The great Fatty pushes the plot and meets his end. Meanwhile, Ed's daughter and the leader arrive. Though the two elders pose no threat, the leader has Ed's daughter pretend to ask the clueless Frank for directions. Frank naively asks if she's lost, and suddenly a revolver appears behind her head. Thus, Frank's family is captured. The organization controls the three, and they learn Ed's true identity and the cave's secret. Ed is brought to the room, and the leader punches him. Despite reaching this point, the director hasn't explained the organization's details. The leader orders Ed's daughter to kill Ed. It's her first time seeing her mother kill, so she turns away. But Ed's daughter hesitates. Just then, Frank breaks free and tackles the leader. They seize the opportunity to subdue the villains, meaning Ed's daughter and her mother betray the organization. They flee with their belongings. Ed knows the situation has escalated and fears more assassins will come. He decides to use the cave to escape. As the first season finale approaches, Frank and his wife finally understand the cave's purpose. After Ed leaves, Frank decides to find Fatty. He apologizes to his wife and steps out onto the planet, seeing furniture. Why is there human stuff on this barren planet? As he wonders, he spots a corpse in the distance. Luckily, it's not his beloved Fatty. It turns out to be someone Ed killed while escaping. This means Ed came from inside the planet to Frank's house. The great Fatty might still be alive on this planet. Just then, Frank's spacesuit warns of low oxygen. He's ready to suffocate, but when he opens his eyes, his wife Irene is beside him. The planet has oxygen. Irene, willing to die with her husband, left the base. This solves the planet's mystery. You think it's over, but Irene spots a strange structure ahead. As they approach the rocks, they discover the planet has a city. The first season of Night Sky ends here. The plot progresses painfully slow. Multiple protagonists revolve around one theme, but the writer loves depicting family life. In a 50-minute episode, 2 minutes are for plot, and the rest is idle chatter. As a passionate viewer commented, there won't be a sequel. This plot will definitely be cut in the second season. If not for Simmons, I doubt many would watch.